So earlier I was reading a book called Black Breeding Machine. It talks about the slavery of what was programmed into us in the North Atlantic slave trade. The bit that stood out to me was page 19 and page 20. I also put the link of the book in the description. But what stood out to me is the description of how the black males they supposedly perceived we were in West Africa. And it basically was the state they finally got us to in the 90s after the crack epidemic, was how they described us as we were in Africa. As we know, how we were described in Africa was not true, as in, if you check the 1400s, that was the most thriving empire in the world. They also mentioned how we was great inventors, so you can't be a destroyed people and great inventors at the same time. It doesn't add up. So we knew how they described us is how they desired us to be in the end. The main behavior traits I saw is they said we were unable to reason, unable to do geometry, mathematics, and stuck in a child state of mind. Now we know that's not true, but with how we see what they call Generation Z, which is age 7 to age 23, we can see that behavior is going to become a reality if a lot of parents don't step up and align their children in the right place, because that is how the system's going to design the black males especially to turn out, because it's a forced reality. Now I've got a link up, I'll also put this in the description. I found it interesting. It's an article about the black male personality. I'll put the exact link because you have to buy it for $49, whereas there's a way you can just get the right page. And I'm just going to read through it and then parallel it to what we see today. This is page 10 of a document of a black scholar written June 1971. It says, among many psychiatrists, the term personality is used almost in its literal sense, i.e. reference to the mask worn on stage by actors in ancient Rome. Personality is like a mask in that it is made up of patterns of behavior through which the individual expresses his uniqueness. It develops as a result of actual contracts with the world and the organization of experiences gained from these contacts into an integrated whole. An individual learns to behave in a particular way as a result of interactions with people, not because he possesses innate imperatives for certain kinds of behavior. The individual's most distinctive and fundamental human qualities are products of his experiences with other human beings. He learns his personality as a result of an event in his personal history. That is to say, personality development is largely a function of social conditions under which one grows up. Personality attributes are first acquired through the child's imitation of parental behavior, which is usually transmitted unconsciously in context of love and care. The family constitutes the primary agent for interpreting the world to the child. There's more useful information in this, but I'm going to just summarize from what we read so far, because what is happened to make us a destroyed people? We're destroyed, but we're not unable to rise from the ashes. Understand that. You ain't failed till you stop trying. But the engineering of behavior took a long time. Sometimes it's good to research how we used to act each decade. So by now Black Wall Street's common behavior, but it took a long series of behavioral programs to take us from where we was at the time of Black Wall Street and thriving in the 1930s to 1950s down to what we see in 2021. Now, the key thing they did is series of things. So they messed with our money, but even then they couldn't take us down, so they had to destroy Black Wall Street by airstrike. That was the first step, destroy what we made. And then after they destroyed what we made, they refused to give us jobs to get back the money from what we made. And by the time you get to the 1950s, we had no choice to rely on each other. And believe it or not, with the lynching and still having to rely on each other, we were still the most together families in the Western world. We weren't divorcing, our women had our back, the men were there for the women. But it was slowly creeping in, the drink and the domestic, but that was a minority case in the 1950s, believe it or not. We were mainly under Christian values, not like the Christian church you see today, but a Christianity that actually somewhat made sense to what the Bible portrayed. As you know, these days the Christianity is pagan and New Age, whereas the true Christianity is Old Testament law with the correct concept of Christ. But what was interesting is after that, they still continued to mess with the money and make us feel like we're not wanted, but they couldn't really get a foothold into breaking us down until the culture. So what they did is they used Martin Luther King as a pawn, but he was, when you research him properly, he was wiser than what it was. It was really and truly the inside jobs of the people who hang with Martin Luther King. Without those snakes that our people always have, you always are able to take people down. So if he wasn't snaked, we would have been in a better position. But since he was, they was able to steer the narrative to say that Martin Luther King was fighting to make us be accepted among white people, whereas his actual mission was, he was actually fighting to get us in a better economic status with white people. There's a difference. Economics is not the same thing as assimilating your culture. So now they assimilated the culture, we now picked up the dysfunctions that were common among white families. The things of women not respecting their men, that's very common among white families. But the thing is, if you're in a system that's designed around your dysfunctions, it doesn't destroy you. Whereas when we pick up their dysfunctions, it tears apart our households because we haven't got an economic and political safety net to uphold our madness. So by the time the 70s came around, things like black men going for white women started to arise. And it seems innocent, but again, the nurturing influence of a white woman is very opposite to the nurturing influence that a black man needs. So that boy tends to grow up a lot more frantic. That's why there's a saying that mixed race or light-skinned men are emotional, because that's the mother's erratic nurturing influence. Whereas I wouldn't say toughness, because it's actually a beautiful trait in our women, it creates a stable mind in a black man when you've got a strong mother and a strong black father. It creates the success mind state. But when you have a white mother and a black father, especially if the black father's bending to what the white mother wants, it creates an unstable child. Whereas if a black man even bends to what a black mother with a strong mindset wants, it still creates a stable child, because you're the same culture and on the same mind state, that it's not unhealthy to listen to your spouse's requests. You see what I mean? So by the time the 80s come around, the assimilation of the cultures and the pushes of media, now we assimilate, they can now push media, and we are accepting the cultural differences as our own. We now put an emphasis on things like Christmas, all their celebrations. We are now running with a culture that is a hybrid between the original black Israelite culture and the white, just whatever their culture is. I don't care for it, I'm not going to lie to you. But we're upholding it like it's our own, and it's tearing us apart. We have a lot of erratic men running around, and still the redlining of the economic status is still affecting us. So by then, we're seeing two issues. We're seeing we've got no money, And we're going about it the way the white man tells us to go about it, by being erratic. No longer we're going about it like the way we did in the 50s. Let's band together and help each other out and get ourselves better. No, we're too vain. We want to look better than the next person, so we result into crime. That's not our traits. That's a white man trait, especially of the higher classes. I've got no money, let me go into another country and steal. But now our culture, because they've got security in theirs, so we are now stealing from each other. I've got no money, let me go to my neighbor and steal. You see what I mean? It's stupid, because you can't steal from white people, because they are set up with neighborhood watches and so on. There's too many system and economic and political things in place that if you're going to go around stealing from white people, you're going to find yourself in jail within a week. Steal from your own people, you can get away with it for like 3 to 10 years. You get what I mean? And then they still can hold us down. People like Public Enemy, the uprising, we're realizing we're Israelites, we're still driving in the majority. That's actually the minority case of who's doing the nonsense. We're driving to see a better reality for ourselves. And then crack hits. And then that black men still haven't recovered in a majority from what happened in the crack era. Even if you didn't take crack, just what happens as a whole to our communities, they still haven't recovered. And then by then the gangster rap comes out to top it off, and we are now acting out the behavior they said we were before slavery. We was never that until after the crack hit. And then now the behavior we are acting out portrays exactly as they say. We're stuck in arrested development, we're frozen in time. The school system's not going to help us, the job situation's not going to help us. I didn't even mention about the school system being designed from the 70s onwards to slow black men learning down. They know that the way we learn is very opposite to the way they learn. So there's a book called The Conspiracy Against Black Boys by Kwanzu, or you'll find it. There's only one book out there. There's not a lot of information trying to help us, so you'll find it if you just type that in. And it speaks about how they put white female teachers in schools which have predominantly black children, because they know we struggle to learn because it's directly opposite from the way we naturally think. We're active learners, whereas they try and make us sit down and learn things in a way opposite to the way we think, and it's very slow for us. We get bored before we actually learn. It doesn't affect our women so much because it's more in a female mind state, whereas us, we can learn math but just make it more active. So we've got all these impositions stacked up against us, as well as the gangster rap and the crack hit. And now the fathers are absent in the home for many reasons, either chasing pleasure or lack of confidence. And now we have unstable men growing up, and the pleasure-seeking culture which is pushed on TV, we're assimilated into there, so we believe that's us, even though it's not us. So even by the mid-2000s, now with the absence of fathers, you're now seeing the women deteriorate. The hoe culture is no longer just in a music video, it's now a common theme. Because the fathers install the confidence even in the females, as much as a lot of people don't understand the value of the father, he installs the values. So women are not finding it weird to carry themselves out in a way that devalues them, and the men are already devalued by this point. So by the time we get to the 2010s, we have effeminate men because they're only surrounded by direction from females and the push of media and all the things stacked up against us, and society showing a woman gets more from society as a man. As you saw, when the men fell off, the government picked them up. So the government now, the white government, which doesn't like us, now becomes the man of the house. And it's been the man of a house since the crack epidemic. And you now see a status of very weak black men. then the coronavirus is the nail in the coffin for what they think a lot of us will never recover. And the truth is, many of us won't, but those who try will. We have to reverse the clock on the damages that were done, and you can see the reality change. But to wrap it up, of the first thing I was reading, the reason why I read that is because the result of what you see the men as now is exactly what I read. Apply all of that to what I've read in the black male personality. I'll skip in. So the mask worn concept. Personality is like a mask that is made up of the patterns of behavior through which an individual expresses his uniqueness. Now, we know the patterns, so just remember all the things I've said and apply it, and it will click. It develops as a result of actual contacts with the world and the organization of experiences gained from these contacts into an integrated whole. An individual learns to behave in a particular way as a result of interactions with people, not because he possesses innate imperatives for certain kinds of behavior. The individual's most distinctive and fundamental human qualities are products of his experience with other human beings. He learns his personality as a result of events in his personal history. That is to say, personality development is largely a function of social conditions under which one grows up. Personality attributes are first acquired through the child's imitation of parental behavior, which is usually transmitted unconsciously in the context of love and care. The family constitutes the primary agent for interpreting the world to the child. Now, if a child's grown up with all these impositions placed from the 1930s, pre-designed from the 1600s till now, don't be confused about the behavior you see in the black men. But if you, as it says, the patterns of the behavior, but if you understand the patterns of who we were in a time where we were thriving as Israelites in Africa through Christ, and replicate those traits, the patterns will change, that by the time you have 2 more generations of children, it will be as if there was no damage ever done. Try it. Old Testament law and the rudiments of Christ, because Christ was only preaching out of the Old Testament. The New Testament wasn't written at that point. So Old Testament law were the rudiments of Christ, and you will see the reality change very quickly. You might not see it so much in your generation, but keep installing the patterns. Keep installing the patterns. And if you teach your children to install it, and then they teach their children, and they install it into their children, it will be as if no damage ever happened, because the patterns of what they will see of what's good will remain. And even though there's dysfunction, they will understand those patterns are bad, so they will not pick it up. So it's not about how far we fell, it's about how much we are willing to rise. And we're all sinners just trying to do good. And the reality is, try again, and you'll have it. We just need to keep trying, believe it or not. How many times does a baby try before it learns to walk? We just have to learn how to walk as we were, and we will walk, and eventually run, and we will stand. A higher bless you. All love, family.